All right, you got to sync those two claps at the same time.
Okay.
With our different audio.
Okay. Welcome back to... Okay.
Okay.
I can... that went down wrong. I could tell. You're hurting right now. Okay, so welcome back. Sick Critic, Sick and Wired. Yeah, you know the drill.
Oh, yeah.
Season 2.
Season 2, episode...
This is going to be episode
3? 4?
2. This one's actually going to be episode 2 because I haven't posted one that we've already done.
Oh, and you're posting this first.
And I'm going to post this first because this is about PAX. And PAX just passed.
Mm-hmm. PAX Jacks.
So a lot of this is going to end up being a sort of Q&A because Ethan here...
I did not go to PAX.
He did not go to PAX. I did go to PAX. And he's got a lot of questions. We've been trying to hold off.
He didn't actually go in. He just went and watched.
I went and watched the building that PAX was being held, and it was pretty
I got a lot of questions about that.
The architecture was great. So basically, you know, PAX was this, at the recording of this podcast, it was last weekend. It was last Friday through Monday.
We're already dated.
Yep. And so... I went with a few other representatives from Sick Critic, and it was a lot of fun. At times overwhelming. I haven't been to a lot of expos. We've been to a couple together.
We've been to the last 2 E3s.
Sorry, I didn't mean that. I mean we've been to some as a couple together.
Yes.
I'm straight. My phone number is...
I'm straight. My Grindr account is actually in the description.
But so we've been to some E3s together now, and we both were talking about the potential of going to PAX, but I was able to get a media pass because I write for the site. Podcast
I'm illiterate.
You are... That's why you had that nickname in high school.
Dumbass.
Illiterate. Yeah, those two. Those were the two main ones.
Yeah.
You were called a lot of other things too, but those were the two main ones.
But never late for dinner.
Never late for dinner.
Hey, yo.
Because you could tell time.
Yeah. I can't read, but I can tell time damn well.
Damn well. You can just look at the sun and be like, yeah.
That's why my third nickname is Time.
You can look straight up at the your eyes straight at the sun and be like, "Yup, it's midnight."
Yeah. Somewhere.
Somewhere. It must be dinner time.
I've never been wrong.
So, let's just kind of get into what do you want to know.
My first question, what was your favorite game that you played?
My favorite game was...
Well, let's start with what games did you play?
Okay.
And tell me a bit about them.
So, here, I actually have a list that I wrote while I was there of all the games
that you wish you could play from the outside.
That I wish I could play. Number 1, Borderlands 3. Actually, just to get that out of the way real quick, I did not play Borderlands again. Borderlands 3 was there, and they did have FLAC this time, which they didn't have at E3.
I cannot wait for Friday.
I did not play it, though, because I already demoed it, and it was a really long line.
And you want to get as much in as you can.
And I wanted to try and get a lot in. With that being said, I got a lot less in than I thought I would. But the first one on this list here is Final Fantasy VII Remake. Which I've told you a little bit about what I thought about it, but I haven't really told you about it. So,
why did you want to play it? Because I know you were turned off by it at first.
Well, I'm not going to lie. The reason I played it, we had Devin. He's kind of the head honcho at Sick Critic. So Devin was supposed to go, but didn't. He had issues with some work stuff. And so, believe it or not, this is not our only job. Believe it or not, we cannot do this for practically no money and live.
That's why I'll never be in the big leagues, kid.
So we so he wasn't able to make it. But before he found that out, he had planned to go to this Square Enix thing. Square Enix had rented out a private room in a hotel which a lot of different I found out a lot of different companies do. That's something I didn't know before. So it's
a massive orgy.
Yeah, it was pretty nice. I came, so I go in. First of all, I was late, which I was not happy about because I thought it was at one time. I thought it was at 12 because that's when we were originally trying to schedule it, and it wasn't until I actually got there. When I tried to confirm the details with Devin through Discord, and he said, "Yeah, it's at 11:30." But that wasn't the information I was looking for. Mm-hmm. I was asking him about other stuff, and he just said, and he said, "Here's what they sent me," and it included the time, but I didn't even read the time because I was like, "I know what time it is. It's at 12," but it was at 11:30.
Shit.
And I was reading that at like 11:25, and I had a Subway sandwich in my hand, and so I wrapped it up, shoved it in my bag, and hauled ass to the Sheraton Hotel. Really beautiful hotel. And it's like right across from PAX. You'd be surprised how like spread out PAX is. PAX is not just the Washington Convention Center. Almost all of the panels are off-site.
Almost like
not almost all of the panels are off-site.
Almost how there's like an Xbox experience at E3.
Kind of, except the panels it's just a little bit different just because of the nature of panels. It's not like going to a whole other expo, but you go into like a room, and a very large room, or sometimes like a theater.
Yeah.
And you listen to people talk about stuff and the gaming industry and things like that. So it's pretty cool. I only went to a few, which we can talk about later. But anyway, so it's really spread out. They had it at the Sheraton, this private demo at the Sheraton Hotel. They had the demo on the show floor as well, but this was just for media, and somehow we got invited to it. But since Devin couldn't go, he originally wanted to go not for the games, but as much as he wanted to go because he really wanted to solidify a contact with Square Enix. He's a very good talker. He can really talk to people, so he really wanted to do that so that we could review more games from like Square Enix if possible, and so we could get kind of the bigger games on the site for everyone listening. But but since he couldn't make it, I had to take over that slot now because. So some of the things we scheduled with him overlapped with other things, so a lot of stuff I had to just say, you know what, I'm sorry, we can't make it. One of our guys fell out of the plane on the way here, and
they said nice,
and they said no problem, well, don't worry about it.
Happens all the time.
We hear that 5 times every PAX. But this was one that I was like, no man, I gotta go on this.
That's a big boy.
But honestly, there wasn't really much opportunity for communicating. It was just kind of, you walked in and it was sectioned off. They had on the left-hand side, they had like food and stuff. I'm on a kind of a strict diet, so
only grass.
Only grass, and they didn't have they only had hay. So I'm on a kind of a strict diet for health reasons. So I couldn't partake in any of the food or anything like that. But anyway, I walked in late. I had texted the contact person on my way there. I was like, man, I'm sorry, I'm running late. And they're like, don't worry about it. But it's sectioned off on the left. You enter the left-hand side was the food and like a table or two. And that's where a lot of the people who were running the event were sitting. And again, it was at 11:30, so it was right around lunchtime. So no one was very talkative. They were all eating. So on the right, there's this kind of entrance with this wall. There's a wall and like a little spot that you could enter to the right, and then
let me guess, there are like 7 TVs with like Final Fantasy set up on a PS4.
Okay, now I gotta say we re-recorded this part. Okay, fuck you.
I'm a sidekick.
Yeah. So there were 6 or 7 TVs all hooked up to PS4s, and they all had 2 games: Final Fantasy VII Remake, and the Trials of Mana. I'll get to Trials of Mana in a second. But, so I didn't end up getting that contact, because I'm just not as talkative. But then I ended up really liking the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Not a big fan of the Final Fantasy games, especially since the earlier ones tended towards turn-based combat, which is god awful, just boring. Unless it's Pokemon, in which case it's kind of cool because you have the collection aspect of it. And
You've
that's
never
kind of
played Paper Mario, so.
Yeah, that's true. But anyway, so I ended up saying so I didn't get what I went there for originally, but the Final Fantasy VII remake is pretty awesome. It's got
I thought it looked good.
Aesthetically, I mean, there's nothing super revolutionary about any of the graphics or anything, but honestly, it just looks nice.
Visually, it reminds me of Nier a lot.
I can see that. I think it's a little more.
Maybe not the style.
I think it's a little sharper and clearer and
a bit less gritty.
It's almost like a more modern. It's if Nier Automata was
made today.
Yeah. I think that's a good comparison. So it's so it's very nice, and then what was great was the combat. Well, for one thing, everything was very polished from what I saw. No, I didn't
fall through the map.
I didn't run into any bugs at all. Nothing where I even got to thinking about maybe that's a bug or maybe that shouldn't happen. Nothing like that. I was just kind of immersed in it. And
how long was the demo?
I honestly don't know. I lost track of time while I was in there, especially since because it was really weird. They schedule you and they're like, yeah, it could take like 90 minutes for both demos for the whole time, and I was out of there in like 30 to 45 minutes.
So it was probably a 20-ish minute demo.
Probably.
Maybe a bit less.
Yeah, it was probably around 20 minutes. Maybe a little less, because they had like a big intro for it at the beginning that was just like a pre-recorded video.
Like at Borderlands at E3?
No, different.
Oh, no, there was a guy presenting that.
There was a guy presenting that. So, and it was a little different just because that was more like explaining all of the new things with the game. This was more to explain the world you're in and the controls of the game, and how to play it exactly.
Since you don't get all the exposition that's actually in the game.
Yeah, so it was like a 6-minute video or whatever, but you get in and it's really cool. You're playing as Cloud and Barrett. You're able to switch back and forth between quick characters, which Barrett is a ranged character. Yeah, he's got a minigun, and Cloud is bullshit. So he, believe it or not, he's not broken in this game. Damn. So
what's his back air like in that game?
What's his shield like? Is it any good? So you start off as Cloud, of course, and you don't get the hang of switching between characters, but you get a hang of it really quickly. I was surprised at how effortlessly I was switching between characters. It's a little odd because to switch between characters, you got a controller, and to switch between characters, you use the D-pad. Which you use the left stick to move around.
So you gotta pause. For a millisecond.
So you kind of have to stop and hit the button.
Unless you're doing some claw grip shenanigans,
right? So, which I am not doing. I like my hands. So he.
Way to flex on me for not having hands.
Yeah, you know how sensitive I am about that. You clapped at the beginning of this.
With my... Never mind.
With your stubs.
With my cheeks.
So the combat, you start off as Cloud and you're just melee, and for every time you hit an enemy, you charge up your
limit.
No.
What?
It does charge up your limit, but you charge up like almost like an ability bar.
Like mana?
Yeah, kind of. You charge up all of your... You charge up this bar, and once the bar is full, you can use a spell or a special ability or something like that, and it takes away from your bar. And depending on how much of your bar you filled up, will depend on what kinds of spells and stuff you can do at that moment, and then each spell does different damage, and each ability does too. And then different spells, especially spells, are because they're kind of elemental. Mm-hmm. They're elemental.
So is there like type advantage and shit?
Yeah. So certain enemies like will be affected more or less by certain things. Like I think it was thunder.
That was good against
is good against mechanical enemies. Which makes no sense because thunder is a sound. But you kind of get the idea, so stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then the abilities weren't so much that way, but different abilities, like Cloud had like a triple strike or something like that.
Slash.
Where you could you could either attack one enemy 3 times with big blows, or you could go 2 for one and 1 for another. But there was a way you could switch between enemies during that move, so that was really cool.
Is that what his F smash is? Or he's like,
I don't think so.
I mean,
maybe I don't think so. Anyway, so you've got So at first you're just playing as Cloud and you're like, okay, I can switch between characters, whatever. But then the game forces you to switch between characters because there are certain enemies that you can't really get with Cloud. And if you can, it's just a kind of a pain in the ass. And then you get to a final boss battle, very similar to the Borderlands 3 demo and most demos. They kind of bring you to a boss battle at the end, and you do that.
You play a chapter of the game or something.
With this boss, I'm sure there's a technical name for it. I'm not a Final Fantasy guy, but it's like a big crab, kind of a big mechanical crab.
Okay.
Which is ironic because then a big crab was what you fought in Trials of Mana for the boss battle too. But you ended up maybe a spider is probably more
accurate,
like what it was. But and the boss battle took a while. I'm not talking Monster Hunter World, but it took quite some time. It was definitely shorter than any Borderlands boss I think I've.
Was it like half the demo was the boss? Not quite.
Pretty much, yeah. Half the demo was building up to the boss and like bringing you through some enemies. And then you get to this area where you finally get to the boss, and then the boss is at least half of the demo.
I like bosses like that.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Did you beat it on your first try?
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it was probably on like some sort of easy mode or something, or I don't know if there are different modes, but I never died or anything. There are a lot of ways you can heal yourself. You have like potions. There's a spell called Cure that you can use to heal yourself. It gives you +2 charisma. So it's so you go up into this boss battle, and there were times where the boss like latched onto a wall that was inaccessible because it was a very big place. The walls were like, because you were going on like these bridges and platforms and stuff like that. Almost picture kind of like Star Wars Episode 1 Duel of the Fates.
Oh yeah.
Almost in a way, not that same environment, but just the way that there were platforms connected by.
I also picture Episode bridges. 5 like in Cloud City with Luke and Vader.
Yeah, sort of. I think it's a
bigger platforms.
Yeah, but I do think it's a little bit closer to Episode 1 than that. But
that's the idea.
Very, very. Yeah, that's the idea. So so the walls are nowhere near you. So Cloud cannot attack this guy unless he uses a spell. But the spells are very weak compared to you if you just go to Barrett
and
shoot it a bunch. And then while doing that, you can build up your ability bar. And so it kind of forces you to switch, and then it helps you get in the habit of switching, and it just does it really well. And then, by the way, this is like the first level of the entire game. game. So that's really good for that to
already natural.
Be nice and intuitive when you've got a whole game ahead of you still.
And so probably a long ass game.
Yeah, it gives you the final product is probably going to give you a lot more time in the game for experimenting with what kinds of attacks you use and in which situations, as opposed to having to get yourself acclimated to switching between characters. And of course, the other character gets controlled by AI when you switch.
Yeah.
So, and the AI does a fine job.
Whatever.
The AI is pretty conservative though. So you're still left kind of doing a lot of damage. One thing I liked was there were two ways that you could avoid taking damage from a big attack. From any attack from an enemy. You could try and time it just right and roll out of the way. That's one option. And if I were to compare it to, say, Smash, because I know we both have a lot of experience there, if I were to compare it to that, it would be trying to roll out of the way is similar to parrying almost. You can't actually parry really, but it's similar in the sense that you have to time it just right.
Or like in Breath of the Wild, if you dodge at the right time, get the flurry attack. I know you didn't finish that game.
I did not finish that game. I barely started that game. But I definitely intend on finishing that at some point in the next 30 years. But so you could take that chance and not get any damage, or you could block, which your block nullifies pretty much any attack, but you still take a little bit of damage.
Yeah, chip damage.
Yeah, so it does kind of become a balancing act of which defensive,
do you want to block or roll?
Yeah, which defensive things do you use in which situations and things like that. So I did appreciate that. Just another thing that helps the game lend itself to experimentation more as variety. You play and things like that. There's already tons of different spells and abilities that you can use in combination. It's really cool to try to say like, okay, well, Cloud's a very melee character, so I think it makes sense to use a lot of his abilities because they're melee too, as opposed to spells. Whereas Barrett's more ranged and spells are more ranged, so you can do things like be with Cloud, do an ability, and while he's doing that ability, you can immediately switch to Barrett and make him do a spell or an ability, and then you're both doing a ton of damage to one target, or you're both dealing out damage to a lot of different targets. So, again, experimentation, just a lot of variety in there, which is so much better than the turn-based combat system. So
that's way less engaging.
Yeah, and you have, and when you go to I should have mentioned when you go to choose a spell or an ability, you end up time slows way down, so you have time to go through and kind of select from a menu.
Almost like, I know you haven't played it a bunch, but Enter the Gungeon when you're switching guns, I imagine.
It's actually spot on, pretty much just like that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So it's so it's very nice. It would have been very clunky and crappy if it didn't give you that buffer. It would have sucked.
Would have been like playing Hero.
It would have been like playing Hero on Smash. So, and then right before the boss battle, you get a cutscene, and come to find out, not everyone got to play the English version of the game. I did.
Oh.
But apparently, like, some systems just weren't set up with the English version for some reason, so there were a lot of people who just watched subtitles. But I got the English version, and, a lot of Japanese games, you give them the benefit of the doubt because they're because of the translation, some things get lost, especially tone and certain inflections in the way the voice actors do it. It was spot on.
Really,
it was really good. Probably one of the best voice acting voice acting performances
in just that small snippet you heard
in a Japanese game. Yeah, just from that small snippet, you could totally see that the two characters had different motivations. The two characters were different people.
They're not robots.
You could totally see the emotional state that Cloud was in, which I haven't played any Final Fantasy game, so I don't know like before Final Fantasy VII all the things that happened to him, but he was very.
I'm pretty sure he's only the protagonist in 7. I think that's how the Final Fantasy games work.
Is that true?
I think so. Don't quote me on that.
I don't know, but he was. You could tell. I could picture in a way kind of what his backstory might be, the types of things he might have gone through, none of which could be true, but but you get that feel of how the character feels.
You get their vibe.
Who he is. Yeah, it's really nice, and same thing with Barrett. I mean, very, very well done. So overall, the whole experience, it was one of the best demos I played by far. So Final Fantasy VII Remake. If you're a Final Fantasy fan, it'll blow you away. You should definitely check it out. Dialogue, from what I did a little bit of research on it, and from what I found, the dialogue seems to be totally like reworked and given an overhaul. It's not the same. The story's the same, of course, but just the dialogue is different, especially since Final Fantasy VII was all text. There was no voice acting, and now you've got it's like a cinematic. It's more cinematic. So great game. Just spent 15 minutes talking about that one.
Nice.
But next, naturally, Trials of Mana. I played right after that. The guy was like, this was really funny because I played Final Fantasy VII. I was like, man, that was really great. That was good. And then the guy who was running it came over and he's like, all right, you played it. What'd you like about it? And I told him what I thought. And then he said, all right, great. So do you want to try Trials of Mana? We can start that up right now. And I was in a good mood. I was like, yeah, let's do Trials of Mana.
I know where this is going.
That game has no reason to exist. And I mean that in the meanest possible
traditional
way.
JRPG.
It is so boring. It's a traditional JRPG dumbed down
wrong
to an extraordinary
level. You wouldn't have even liked it if it was like a good JRPG.
No, I probably wouldn't have. It was really not good. The animations were just so basic.
Was it 3D?
Yeah. But the animations were just so basic. I don't know if they plan on changing it, but you went around to some characters that were in the world before you started the actual mission, and there were like 3 pieces of dialogue repeated amongst like 15 different characters in the world, and it was really bad. Voice acting was terrible, which again, Japanese game, but this was really bad.
Damn.
The game had no explanation or context. It really just made no sense. It was literally an opposite experience of Final Fantasy VII. So it was just not a great experience. Again, the animations, the enemies and the final boss, which again was literally a giant crab. They were just so unoriginal, so boring. Their attacks were stupid.
Was it turn based?
No, it was real time, but
boring.
It was so boring. I was like, I ended up meeting up with this guy Elliot, who works for. I gotta plug this right now. I can't because Elliot's a great guy. I talked to him a lot while I was at the expo, but with the Geekly Grind link in the description for the Geekly Grind. That he's a very great guy. They run a very wholesome publication, and I talked to him about it. He also got to play it, and he said, and he and I both kind of had the same thought, which is, you really should have played Trials of Mana first, because they gave you an option. They said, "Do you want to try Trials of Mana first, Final Fantasy VII?" Everyone's gonna pick Final Fantasy VII Remake first, but nobody should have, because then you kind of leave there and you're like, man, that sucked.
But Final Fantasy was great.
Final Fantasy was great, but Trials of Mana was just absolute. There's no reason for it to exist. We have games like that already. We don't need that one, and that's gonna be the next Smash character.
Hero 2 from a different franchise.
Trials of Mana, the character.
Mana.
So, I think it's pronounced Trials of Mana or something.
I don't fucking know.
But yeah, just bad. So
unoriginal.
That's all I've got to say about that one. It's just pick up a JRPG, program yourself a random JRPG selection program,
and that's it.
And it will most likely give you, if it's entirely random, it will most likely give you a game that's better. That's a better JRPG. Next game, Game Deck. Game Deck's kind of like I'm gonna try and keep some of these short, but Game Deck is like a detective type game, but it's kind of set in a futuristic setting, in a sort of setting where you can go into games.
Okay.
And like be a physical being inside of games. And there's a lot of shady business that happens. Yeah, this is indie. It's a Polish game, actually. It's made by a Polish developer. And that game was okay. The whole concept behind it is you have these people who are game decks, and basically they can be called, they live normal lives. This is what I gathered. They live normal lives in but then they could at any moment be recruited as a game deck to investigate some shady shit. And so as a detective, kind of, as this game deck, you kind of have to go around. It's a point and click. At least right now it is. The developer said, or the guy that was there, the producer who was there representing it, but he said that they're looking into controller support and mouse and keyboard support. But right now it's just a point and click to move, kind of like Club Penguin. Best.
I'm sold.
Yeah. $45,000. Here you go.
I'll take all your
Kickstarter. So it was a really interesting concept that to me could have just been done a lot better. It seemed like you kind of wandered around taking missions with very little. I hate it when games ask you to, hey, go explore these, and you feel like you have no context for it. And in this particular situation, it's character context. The characters just had no connection to what was happening, it felt like. It's like they didn't spend a lot of time on character development, but they spent a lot of time on, I want this story to look kind of like this, and I want these missions to look like this, but you had no context for why this guy was doing it, how this guy was feeling that you're playing, and that took from it.
How much of that is, though, because you're playing a demo?
Not, as someone who really values characters and story in a game above all else, that's just my personal preference. You can tell it's probably going to be a game-wide issue, just because you can tell from the way the dialogue was, and stuff like that, because the dialogue always had to do with the mission. The character,
there's never just
as a character, they never really got involved in the story.
Really good storytelling, you can like understand the character, like you were saying about Cloud and Barrett. You can just kind of understand them just from what they're saying and stuff.
The best characters are the ones that play out the story, but the way they say things, the way they do things, the reasons they say that they do things, tell you a lot, not just about why they're doing it, but what's happened to them in the past, who they are right now, and you can kind of make assumptions and thoughts about what must have happened to them, what type of so good example. So someone in a game says, you know what, let's go do this, and it's like a really shady thing or whatever. Then you
let's go do coke.
Yeah, yeah. But they're like, let's break into. I'm just gonna use like a Life is Strange example. Let's break into the school, and the person, and one reality, the character says, I don't think that's a good idea. but in another reality, the character's like, absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
Just from those two dialogues, you get a better idea of
and it's the same,
who the character
the plot
is.
would progress the same way, but they have different impact.
Yeah, it says something about the character, even if it's just a small little detail. You know, the one who kind of thought about it a little bit, probably is a little more adventurous, has done some similar type stuff where it's like they could get into trouble maybe, but this was maybe a little too far for them. Whereas the other one's probably a lot more like, you know what, I gotta be rational about this. That absolutely
and
not.
They
I
come
don't do
across
things
as more
like
bold.
this. Yeah,
The latter, the absolutely not person comes across as a lot more like
they come
in command.
They come across as kind of like in control of the situation. I don't know if I'd use the word bold, because the former would actually be kind of more bold in a sense, because they've done some things possibly. They're maybe a little more adventurous and bold, just not in this particular scenario. But yeah, the other one's just like, yeah, absolutely not. We're not doing that. So just little things like that, and it's that kind of stuff that's good writing. You didn't even have basic writing for characters, and at least not in the demo I played.
A non-factor.
Yeah, you could tell it was going beyond. I mean, I should clarify, actually. It's not that there wasn't any, but what was there didn't make any difference, and it just seemed so basic and dry. So it was almost like there may as well not be anything. So that's kind of what you're looking at for game deck. Really cool idea, but just not, I don't think, executed the way it should have been, because you have this really cool world. What players want to do is explore what that world's about, how your character fits into that world. How do you, as a person living in the modern day, suddenly get sucked into this futuristic world? You have to write really well to transport someone like that.
That makes sense.
And it's not there. Let's see, I've got Deer Simulator. This game is shitty Goat Simulator.
Ooh.
That's pretty much what it is. And Goat Simulator is already not the best game ever, you know? But Deer Simulator, you play as a deer, and
instead of a goat,
you go around a monochromatic, very dry, lifeless city, and you just destroy stuff.
As a deer.
That's pretty much the only thing. The only thing that's really even fun about it is your neck can extend and latch on to buildings and light poles and cars and planes even. I saw planes flying overhead, and I'm like, I bet I could.
They can reach infinitely?
And so I could... Well, no, but I got myself onto a high building, and where that was close to a plane, I was like, I bet this works.
So did the plane pull you, or do you pull the plane?
The plane pulls you. So you now...
are riding a plane.
From a physical standpoint, you are now part of the plane system. And so you're moving with it. I didn't go any far because they had certain boundaries for the demo, so I just kind of hit an invisible wall, kind of. Well, not totally invisible. But anyway, that was the best part about the game, because you got to kind of fly around the city a little bit. But the way you look at it, they're trying to build a whole game around destroying stuff and exploring this world and how you can destroy a bunch of stuff. But you just have no motivation to explore the world because it's just so bland. It's a bunch of whites and grays, and
that makes sense.
There's green for the grass and black for the roads, and some green and some reds and yellows and stuff like that.
Were there any like secrets or anything, do you think, or is it just like going out and destroy shit? Because I know Goat Simulator has a lot of like secret stuff that's kind of weird.
That's the thing, is that you look at the trailer they have, and you look at some of the screenshots that they have on the Steam page, and it looks like there's all kinds of different stuff you can do. But when you play this demo, it's very little. They should not have had this demo there. This was a publisher called Playism. They do a ton of games, but they should not have had this there. It wasn't ready. It was because it's already, as it is, the city that you're in is already kind of small. But then you only had access in this demo to like a fifth of the city or something like that. It's just very small. You went from side to side so quickly, and there was nothing really to do other than destroy stuff. And if you destroyed enough stuff, then these like cops came out from the police station, and the cops were different animals like sheep and pandas and stuff like that. And then the whole game, when that happened, became about, okay, destroy all of the cops. All right, now destroy more shit so you could get to the next wave of cops that's more difficult. There was just no reason to play it.
That makes sense.
It was just boring. So I saw it originally and I was like, this looks really cool. It looks stupid as hell. It could be really fun, and it wasn't. It just wasn't. It wasn't fun. It wasn't stupid enough. There wasn't enough you could do. In Goat Simulator, it's a pretty sizable world where there are a lot of different places you can go and things you can look at, lots of secrets. This has none of that. It's very bare bones, and I think that's pretty much how they intend to release it. So I don't think it's gonna. I don't think it's gonna do well, and I'm certainly not getting the game. And then you have next on
Goat
the list,
Simulator.
Mutazione.
Oh.
This game is a German game. It's spelt Mutazione. Mutazione. But it's pronounced Mutazione. And it's by Die Gute Fabrik, German developer.
Have you been practicing that?
I practiced that like 50 times. Those two things. Before I did the interview with him, which is link in the description. The interview is up on Sick Critic right now. You can go check it out when you're done listening to the podcast.
You're trapped.
Yeah, don't read articles and drive,
or listen,
or listen and drive.
Exactly.
Or listen to anything.
Or don't listen.
Don't drive.
Don't listen to him.
So Mutazione. I asked, the guy said it was I talked to Nils Denecken, the head of the studio, indie studio, and and he said it's been his passion project, and it's been 10 years in the making.
Wow.
Now, he hasn't spent his whole life for the past 10 years dedicated to this,
obviously.
But he started the company around 10 or 11 years ago. So ever since he started the company, he's had this idea for a game.
And he's been working on it bit by bit.
On and off, mostly from an artistic standpoint, he's been drawing and creating the world and thinking about the story. But really, it's all about there's an island where that was hit by something that turned everyone on it into a mutant. Everyone else on mainland is still human. It's still the same like human world, but you've got this one island, and you go to it to be with your grandfather in a time where he is very ill. And there's a lot of pieces in it artistically, including lots of just a very beautiful art style that's almost like a painting. It looks like you're playing on a painting, but you can go into the painting, and it's very I don't want to say immersive. I don't think that's the right word, but it's just very beautiful and very captivating. I think that's a good word, captivating. And so that has it going for it. The main story is just you doing missions for your grandfather as he's been ill, and
you're on this mutant island.
Yeah, you went to the mutant island to care for your grandfather.
Is that not dangerous?
No, the mutants are friendly and nice, but they're weird.
Oh,
they're it's not like a survival game or anything,
okay.
But it's very peaceful. It's described by the studio as a soap opera, a mutant soap opera. So it's very there's a lot having to do with the story and specifically the interaction between characters. There are a ton of different characters, tons of different side quests you can do and things like that. The main story, from what I could gather, is pretty linear. The branches are when you decide to go off and do other missions and meet different people and do missions for them and just kind of learn about the people in the game and the world. It's text-based. Not the whole thing, but it's text-based in the sense that all the dialogue is text.
There's like dialogue trees?
There are some. I don't think a lot of them go anywhere, really. They're not super important. The dialogue trees are just there for you to get kind of different information and build your relationship with certain characters. And if you say the wrong thing, maybe you don't get a quest or something like that. But again, very linear game.
Okay.
As far as the main game, as far as the main thing goes. But it's pretty. I like it. It's labeled on Steam as a relaxing game, and I don't know if you know a lot about relaxing games, but it's like I think I want to say Journey,
like Enter the Gungeon.
Yes.
No, yeah, Journey, Abzu.
Yeah, those kinds of games. Those are very relaxing games, and it's kind of in the same realm, but with a little more story behind it and motivation. Whereas in those games, you feel like you just kind of wander.
Have you played either of those games?
I have not. But
I just wanted to clarify.
Well, I have seen gameplay though of Journey, but it's just not as. Or no, was it? I saw gameplay of one of them.
I've seen Abzu gameplay,
but it's relaxing, kind of like that. Mm-hmm. If this game were $20, I think I'd wait for it to go on sale. Mm-hmm. If it's $15, maybe I'll get it. I think I definitely get it if it's $10. So it's kind of in that range. It's not something I'm dying to play, but it is a very cool game that could appeal to someone. Honestly, it might be dependent on. So like if it were $20, it might depend on my mood, because sometimes I'm in the mood for like, you know what, I really just want a story. I don't even want to, and maybe I'd buy it for $20. Not much more than that though. I go, but it seems like it's got a lot going for it. You have this thing called a musical garden, where you kind of make tones and songs with what plants you grow. So it's kind of interesting, and that's kind of a lot of the game encompasses that. So a very nice game. With a lot going for it, but wouldn't spend a lot on this game. The guy that I met is very nice, Nils. He's very nice, very passionate about it, and so that was a good experience. You got next one here is the Vale, which I told you a little bit about. I gave you kind of a teaser and told you to check it out, but it's the game I told you about. It's made largely with blind people in mind. And so this entire game, there are no visuals at all. And after talking at length with the developers, that interview is also on the website. And actually, that interview you should definitely check out. They gave me a lot. He kind of, the main guy who Dave Evans, who is the CEO of Falling Squirrel, the company that makes it, he has a lot of experience in the game industry, but he wanted to go specifically on the cinematic side. He's more of a film guy, but he was like, yeah, honestly, it just started off as how can we make a cool adventure game on as little money as possible. Which is a very logical and very important thing to consider when you're running your own indie studio. And no visuals, well, goddamn. I mean, that gets rid of a lot. Significantly. But it's such a cool game. You sit there, and we mentioned it in the interview a little bit. We kind of mentioned it, but there was a moment where the ideal way to play this is to close your eyes. Because otherwise you're just looking at a black screen with some particles dancing around on the screen or whatever, but that's it. And you play the part of a blind person in the game. So you close your eyes and you kind of immerse yourself in it. And there was a moment where he's like, okay, we're going to the next part of the demo. And I didn't hear him. Even though he turned off the game. He had turned off the game, but I didn't hear him because I was just sitting there with the headphones on. They weren't noise canceling that much or anything, but I was just so like immersed in it. So it was so great, and it definitely helped me that it was there was another one that was in a suite at a hotel, the Hotel Theodore, which is again right across from the Washington Convention Center.
And it helps that you're blind.
And it does help that I'm blind. Are you? No, you're there. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, there you are.
Yeah, there
okay.
I
am. So it helped without all the noise of PAX around me. But very immersive experience. He had to like kind of snap me out of it. Like, okay, Brandon, we're going somewhere else now. You're okay. You're back. It was so cool, and they've got like combat and everything. They've got adventuring, and actually, there's like open world aspects.
And do you
sections
like
of it?
Were you using a controller and stuff?
Yeah. It was just like an Xbox controller or whatever.
Sick.
I think it was an Xbox 360 controller. I think I was using it. And it worked so beautifully.
It felt natural.
I did run into a bug in it, but granted, it's not supposed to be released until next year, so they're still working on it. And he was showing me a part of the demo that he hadn't fully tested yet, but he just like restarted it or whatever, and it worked fine. But there was a bug in there. But again, it wasn't supposed to be. He hadn't tested it out yet, so understandable. Still in development. So, but it's so cool. You kind of close your eyes, and the combat is is stationary. You stand in the world of the game. You stand still and wait for enemies to come at you, and then you block their attacks and parry.
Oh, based on sound.
Yeah, and so they've got large attacks. They can throw axe, so you hear an axe, so you hear a. Then you have to put up your shield, which is one of the joysticks, and then the other joystick is throwing your sword in a direction. They did something really smart that I didn't even think about when I was originally researching the game, or even when I was playing the game, but he told me about, which is you'll never hear anything really behind you. If you want to hear something behind you, you have to turn so that it's in front of you, which is a great idea because a lot of people get really nervous when they hear stuff behind them, even if it's not threatening. It's just, but that is a very weird feeling, kind of tingling in the back of your head a little bit. It can be very, I want to say disconcerting. Is that the right word? I think
I've never heard that word.
That I think you're.
Have I?
You have. There's no way you haven't. But anyway, it's such a cool experience to kind of find your way around with sound. You're kind of placed in this open world, and you have to try and walk around just listening to where the sound is. The sound design is really well done.
Does it sound like there's going to be an interesting story at all?
It's hard to say. The story seems a little interesting. The voice acting's okay. It's not great. I don't know if I could call it good, but it's kind of bordering. Sometimes it's decent. Sometimes it's meh. Sometimes it's pretty good. It kind of varies in that range, so it's a little inconsistent on the voice acting. But the story itself, I can't speak about really at all, because all of the voice acting that I heard was explaining the combat. They didn't want to show off like the story and stuff. Especially since they don't have all of the lines recorded just yet, from what they said, but they do have the main combat kind of down and done, and it's really cool. If you look kind of at some of the videos, it's really cool how that they have online. It's kind of cool how they did it. If you were to see the visuals of the game, you're kind of in this room that's totally blank, but there are orbs kind of on the walls that you see, and that's kind of where the sound comes from.
Oh, okay.
And so if you were to look at yourself in the game, you're traveling around this just empty room, but because of the sound and because you can't see anything, you hear these sounds. The sound design is very well done. And you, aside from the voice acting, and you just feel like you're a part of the world. So very cool. I think that's one I'll definitely be getting. I can't see it costing a whole lot.
Yeah, because it's
because no visuals. It's their studios as an indie studio. It's their first game. They made the company to make this game. Nice. So I can't see it costing a lot, and I'll probably be on the review copy list anyway. So, but very cool game. I liked that one. That was one of my favorite experiences at PAX. Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day.
The movie.
Yeah, the movie, the game. No, so it's Groundhog Day, like father, like son. Have you seen the original Groundhog with Bill Murray?
Yes.
Probably not, because you don't know who Bill Murray is.
I was trying to think this whole time what his name was. I was going to make a joke. But I have seen it.
Bill Murray, okay? He does a really great job in that movie. If you talk to some people, especially people who really like comedies, they might say it's one of the best movies.
I mean, it's okay.
Especially coming out of the 90s. We're more into like dramatic movies and things like that, good movies. But this was interesting. So the whole plot behind this is it's kind of a spiritual success. Well, not even just spiritual. It's meant to be a successor to the movie from 1993, and what it is it's called Like Father, Like Son. It's the son of the original guy, Phil Connors, who the game is about. That's who
Will Murray.
Played expertly by Bill Murray. No, wait. I was trying to think of the thing that rhymed with Will Murray, Gil Murray,
Phil Murray,
Jill Murray,
Grill Murray,
no.
Dill Murray, the pickle company.
Okay, you can stop trying. So anyway, stop trying.
Kill Murray.
No, Kill Bill.
Kill Murray.
It's just
the sequel to Kill Bill.
Kill Bill Murray. That's the game. It's a little wacky. The only thing it really showed me was the I was gonna say combat.
You fight a groundhog.
You spawn in the game with a sword, with a short sword, and you have to work your way up to long sword and a mace. But it showed me some of the puzzles. There are a lot of puzzles in the game.
Is it like first person, top down?
Oh, sorry, it's a VR game.
Oh,
I played it at the Sony booth. It's a PlayStation VR game. So I was able to kind of get into it, and the controls weren't great, which is bad for VR, because most VR games don't have great controls. But the thing is that a lot of times that can be summed up to you don't have enough room, so your hands kind of go outside of the area they're supposed to be, things like that. But they've set it up so that there was
plenty of room,
a decent amount of space. It shouldn't have been that big an issue, but it was. So it was a little tough. I could have finished the demo twice as fast if the controls were better. But I tried 2 different puzzles, like 2 different levels or whatever you want to call them, where one of them was I was repairing a coffee machine, and those games where you kind of have to turn the tubes and make it and make like 2 sides connect, kind of.
Yes.
And you have different, like, this one's a turn and this one's
a
or
corner,
like this one's
3-way.
Yeah. So 3-way.
Hey.
So. Like the Square Enix thing. But it was tough rotating those pieces, because you actually have to take your hand and like try and rotate it 180 degrees, kind of. So that sucked. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of times where it wouldn't detect properly which thing I was trying to grab. So I would constantly grab the wrong thing. So not great, not very polished, at least not yet. And basically the whole game was just kind of meh. From what I saw so far. Granted, I saw none of the story. And that's going to be what people are more interested in, because it's a sequel-ish thing to
the movie,
air quotes sequel to the movie, which most people who saw it really enjoyed. So it's so not a terrible experience, definitely not my highlight. No Trials of Mana, but also no Final Fantasy VII remake, you know what I mean?
very good spectrum.
Yeah. That concludes my list on here. But I have more.
Oh.
Because I stopped adding to the list because I
shit.
just forgot. I played one game. I stuck mostly to the games I had appointments for. This was the only game I didn't have an appointment for that I played. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't end up playing that. The line was fucking long, man.
Of course it was.
I didn't want to wait in that shit. I hadn't waited in a line the entire time I was there. I wasn't about to wait in no line for a game of a genre that I don't even like that much.
You went pretending to be me and didn't even play Shovel Knight.
Pretending to what?
You bastard. You steal my media pass.
Whose name is on that pass?
You steal my media pass.
Actually,
don't even play.
Actually, no one's name is on that pass.
Exactly. That's my name. My name is Med.
Med. Nice.
My name's Ed.
Ed.
Ed is in media, so.
Media Ed. I played so this game was called Wooden Nickel. And it's by a company. I'm much more in love with this company than I am with the game because the company's called Brain and Brain. And the reason it's called that is because it's a wife-husband combo. And one of them is more the programmer, which is the left brain, and one of them is more the artist, which is the right brain. So it's Brain and Brain. I freaking love that. And then I love it even more because the guy went to freaking Harvard, dude.
Damn.
And you could totally tell when you talked to him, just the way he talked and the way he presented himself. No, not in a bad way, just in a way where he talked very fast. He knew exactly what he wanted to say. You could just tell, like he was a pretty
smart guy.
Almost like people who have Asperger's, but I don't think he does. But similarly, where people who have Asperger's tend to be really good with like puzzles and they're very intelligent, things like that. But one of the things is that they talk fast sometimes. So he definitely had that sort of vibe where you could tell he was just a very intellectual guy. Then again, that could have just been me going in with the pre-notion of knowing that he was
Harvard.
From Harvard, that he is a Harvard graduate. But they both went to great schools, but he went to freaking Harvard. So that was pretty cool. So I'm just like in love with this company and these two people already. The game though wasn't great, which sucks because it had everything going for him. I already loved the company, and it was set in the Old West, probably my favorite of all time periods.
Of all the Wests.
Of all the Wests, the old one is the best one. I know, I live in the West. It sucks. No, but I really like the Old West.
I don't.
I've always liked it. I've always thought it's kind of cool, kind of a transition period where it felt kind of lawless and kind of free in a lot of ways, and I think that's really cool. And I especially think it's a really cool thing to build a game around. But this just didn't do it for me. It was very... It just...
What kind of game was it?
It was a 2D game. It was very similar to Mutazione, and where it was a 2D game, but you could go up things and you could go in and out of the
landscape.
Yeah, that's as good a word as any. So you could go in and out, and I like to go in and out, so it's really great. So that's really great.
They started off strong.
Yeah. So the thing is that the whole game is based on you get these. So you're trying to go southwest. You've gone west. Now you got to try and go south, but the train heading south is not showing up for 7 days. So you spend a week in the in
the Northwest.
Just the West.
The Midwest.
Kind of, yeah. I guess.
Central West.
Central West. My favorite of all the time periods.
My favorite of the olds.
My favorite of the old West. The old Central West. Ye old Central West. The old West of Central. So you get in there and you have a week, and as you do things in the world, time passes. And so but what's really cool is and this is kind of interesting because we live very close to this place, is they went down to, have you ever been to Tombstone?
No, but I've heard a lot about it.
So when they were doing research for the game, they went down to Tombstone, and as well as a few other places, but that was the main place, and they found an old newspaper clipping there, which is really cool. And that's where the guy the left brain, David is his name, he's in charge of like the story and stuff as well as the programming. So that's where he got the idea of having a newspaper be kind of the driving thing behind the story in the game. So what happens is you're in your hotel room and you get a newspaper every day, and on the newspaper are all kinds of different things happening in the town, and you can choose them. But after you do something, the next day it's a new newspaper with different stuff, and it might have different stuff depending on what you did the first day.
That's cool.
And so it all kind of goes by really fast. I mean, I think I played 2 days worth out of the 7 days just in the demo, and it took like 10 minutes.
Damn.
Or something like that. But the whole idea behind the game is like, you play it out,
and then you read,
and then you go back and you try different combinations of stuff and see what you can do. But from what I saw, the stuff you could do just wasn't interesting enough. I did stuff, and it was like having 30-second stories. It felt almost as tedious as if you went on YouTube and you said and you really like this one channel, and they post 30-minute videos 5 or 4 times a week or something like that. But then they decided, you know what, instead of doing 4 30-minute videos a week, what we're going to do is we're going to do a similar breakup as far as the week is concerned, but within the day we're going to, instead of releasing 1 30-minute video, we're going to release 10 3-minute videos. And you're like, yay, I get to click through all of those. And I mean, we both have YouTube Premium, but there are people who they gotta watch an ad for each one of those videos, and it feels almost as tedious as that, where you're like, I went over to this place and that's got this little story snippet, but now I gotta go somewhere else for it, and it wasn't that rewarding in terms of a story. It was so quick and
that's kind of a shame, because that sounds cool.
The concept sounds so cool, but it just wasn't well done with the actual story and the execution of it. Cool idea though. So, and that's why I was really excited about playing it. So that was a little bit disappointing. There's another game, Wanderlust.
Oh, I've heard about
you
that.
Have.
Is that the music one?
No, not at all. Not even slightly.
What am I thinking?
It's not.
Wander's Song or something.
It's called Wanderlust Traveler Stories or something like that. And you play as, I'm pretty sure you end up playing as different characters going to different places, but you go to real places in the world, and it's entirely a text-based game. The entire game is text and a map. You choose where you want to go on the map. That's kind of your visual of where you are, and you choose dialogue options and things like that. And that's on the right side, by the way. And then the dialogue and text and all that kind of stuff is on the left side of the map. And that's where you choose your dialogue options and read about what's happening. And it's almost like going through a book. But what's cool is that it's real landmarks in the world. It's real countries. It's real. And so you're kind of going all over the place. You could go to Nevada, like which for us is like a
stone throw.
like a 4 or 5 or 6 hour drive or something.
Or like
probably
20,
not
or
even
like
that
18, long. Or like 5 days.
It's like a 7, 8, 10 month drive. So, but so it could be as simple as that, or it could be as extravagant as, man, I went to the Bahamas.
Mm-hmm.
Or I went to the one I played through was this. You played as this girl who went to Thailand, and Thailand, yes, and it was really cool. It was not something I enjoyed playing on the show floor of PAX with all the noise and stuff, especially since the game didn't have any sound really. So definitely not the music thing you were thinking of, but
that was Wanderlust. No, that's what you're talking about. That was Wander's song. I just looked at
Wander song. Yeah, I don't know what that is, but this is Wanderlust, and it was. I think it's a really cool idea, and it's another game that at the right price, I definitely think I'd get it, because again, I like that story, and I like how there's so many different possibilities with the different areas of the world. The areas of the world are well researched. Each one's going to have its different culture and that kind of stuff. So it's a really cool way to say, hey, here's $20 of my money. I'm going to go to Japan. Or I'm going to go to Washington, D.C. I'm going
to go to Glendale.
I'm going to go to Glendale, Arizona and chill out there.
And do nothing and die of
and record a podcast.
At the address.
6 It's a really interesting experience that I would much rather do in the comfort of my own home, without all the noise and without sitting on a crappy little stool and playing the game. So it's
getting kicked in the balls.
Yeah, that the developer was really not friendly. No, they were. I actually didn't even really talk to them. I came up to them. I was like, hey, I'm from Sick Critic. I have an appointment. And they literally didn't say a word to me. The guy just got up and like gestured towards...
He was deaf.
...the chair. Honestly, he may not have spoken English. It was another Polish game. There was like a big Polish booth for a lot of games made by Polish developers. And that was one of them. But then again, it was really good English writing. So... Someone on that team knew English. But anyway, so didn't really talk to the developers much at all, but a cool experience that I'd get at the right price.
And any other games?
I think that covers about everything. Unfortunately, when you're writing about games, you spend a lot of time in the media room writing.
Yeah. So what was your favorite and least favorite? I'm going to assume the 2 Square Enix games.
Least favorite was definitely Trials of Mana. No
contest.
No contest. That was terrible. The best experience is between The Vale and Final Fantasy VII Remake. I think I'm going to choose The Vale just because it's so
unique,
different. It's so different from anything else I've tried in terms of a game. Like, you do have those kind of text-based games where you read it, and it's kind of cool in that way, but you don't really...
You have to experience it.
It's different. Experiencing something, when you read something and experience it in your mind and visualize it, that's one thing. It's a whole other thing to do it through sound, though. It's much more immersive. It makes you feel like it's all around you. Where like when you're reading something, it still feels like you're just like reading something.
Like where the movie says all around you at the theater.
All around you. I don't think it really... It does it like once.
No.
All around you.
No, it like repeats you throughout the... Whatever. Sorry, I'm so right.
I think you're insane. Probably none of the people know what we're talking about. Because that's from a theater that... I don't know how popular that...
Is that Harkins or AMC?
That's Harkins.
I have no idea.
It might be, but that's the thing, is that I don't think it is at AMC, but I know it's at Harkins. But the thing is that AMC is the biggest movie theater chain in the entire country, and Harkins is like only in like 5 or 6 states or something like that.
Harkins is good. Anyways,
join
us for our movie theater podcast.
AMC sucks dick. So
that's the moral of the story.
Yeah. So I'm thinking we'll do a similar thing as we did with E3, because this podcast has gone on a little long now. So we'll make this part 1 talking about all the games, and then I want to tell you more about Mike's
experience,
the actual experience of being there in the next one. Stay chill. Stay sick.
Stay frost.
Stay frost.
Stay critics.
Stay critic.